singing tree coming up on the 18th. Now, that's going to be totally different. What I mean by that is it's going to be at 6 o'clock in the evening on Sunday, December 18th. So invite folks and come to that. There is something new and different this year about it. Some of us were here last night to test it out to make sure that that worked. I think I want to keep you guessing because I want you to be there. I know you will be, but it should be a really neat effect. We'll put it that way. That Mike Ballum has been working on. So pretty cool stuff. So a lot of things coming up this month. It's a busy time, but I want to encourage you to invite somebody. Maybe you're a school teacher. This would be a good event to invite a family to in your class or a couple families and have them come be a part. A neighbor, a coworker, if you don't work here, it'd be a good event for that. So we'd really love to get a lot of folks here. The plan is next year to do a couple showings. So like a Saturday night and a Sunday. Then we could get maybe some of the local churches as well that they wouldn't be here on a Sunday, but they could send people on Saturday, and I think it'd be a blessing to them. And then all that work that goes into it for all our people, and the guy who builds it would really seem worthwhile. And so that's what we're planning for the future. So good things coming up. We will, after our Bible study, we're going to look at some of the prayer requests here tonight as well. Sorry, I have to make a note. How about that? Okay. All right. Well, let's go and go ahead and turn to Mark 14. Mark chapter 14. As you're turning there, one other announcement. I leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, fly out of Sarasota up to Atlanta, and then Atlanta down to Costa Rica, and then we drive into Nicaragua on Monday of next week. We spend the week there doing a Bible camp there in Nicaragua, and then we fly back on Saturday. So, Lord willing, I'll return Saturday night, actually real late, early Sunday morning at 12:15. So I'll be returning then, hopefully with some pictures and different things to talk about on that Sunday, which is the 11th. So I would appreciate your prayers very much for that trip. I hear all sorts of things, and, I don't know if it's what it is. Lord, just testing you and saying, okay, trust in the Lord and do good. And so that's what I'm doing, and I'm not sharing everything with Casey either that I hear for obvious reasons. Anyway, Mark 14. Tonight we're going to look at the account in the scriptures where Jesus is forsaken. And so tonight we're looking at forsaken, Mark 14, verse 27 to verse 52. Let's get started verse 27 here. Then we'll read down through verse 34 to start, 31. And Jesus saith unto them, this is after they had the Lord's Supper. It was the Passover meal. And then they leave, and they went out. They sang a hymn. They went to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus saith unto them, all ye shall be offended because of me this night. For it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. That's directly from Zechariah 13, verse 27. But after that I am risen, I will go before you into Galilee. But Peter said unto him, although all shall be offended, yet will not I. And Jesus saith unto him, verily I say unto thee, that this day, even in this night, before the cock crow twice, thou shalt deny me thrice. But he spake the more vehemently, if I should die with thee, I will not, if I should die with thee, I will not deny thee in any wise. Likewise also said they all. All right, so we're going to talk about forsaken. Jesus was forsaken, and let's see. There we go. Abandonment. Jesus was abandoned. Think about what Jesus had experienced up to this point. He was the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes were the men who Jesus had been talking about, that he was going to go into Jerusalem and he would be betrayed by these people. And it's playing out exactly that way. Now, Jesus is talking about these final hours. He knows what's coming. The disciples give no indication that they have any idea of what's going on. Actually, you see their lack of trust or, just understanding what he's saying in this passage. And so here, the question is, who was guilty of abandoning Jesus? Who was guilty of it? Well, it says in verse 31 that all of them, right? Every single one of them forsook the Lord. It wasn't just Peter. Actually, all of them spoke as though they would not deny him. They would stand firm with him. And so we talk about the abandonment of Jesus, but let's look at the side of why would Jesus need his disciples with him at this time? Why might Jesus need his disciples with him at this point in time? Yes.
He's still human. He's got a human body.
Okay.
The support, the comfort, strength from God, I would say.
Excellent. Yeah, think about yourself. When you're going through a hardship, does it help when everybody just, kind of pushes away? Oh, they're going through a hard time. They just need some peace and quiet. No, often we want support. We want help when we're going through a difficult time. Imagine that you're going through something troubling and your spouse or your parent just decides, I'm going to give you space. I'm not going to be, I'm just going to let you kind of go through this, ride this out yourself. Well, how are you going to feel about that? Well, I'm not going to like that. I want my wife to be there to listen and to help, to support, to encourage, whatever it is, to get through a hardship. And so Jesus, like Tina said, Jesus took on human flesh, right? And that the importance of that is he understands us, right? Isn't that what it says in Hebrews? That he was tempted in all points such as we are, yet without sin. But he also understands our infirmities. And so he understands us, and he went through something very difficult. What is telling about Peter in verses 29 to 31? What do you see there about Peter in these verses? Okay, good.
His emotions just overwhelmed. He probably would have died right there, but later on he wouldn't even let himself be known.
Okay, good. Yeah, when Jesus is there, he seems very bold, right? Confident. I will protect you. But then just hours later, he's the one that's denying the Lord Jesus when Jesus isn't there, right? And he's all alone. Yeah, what else? You see that's very telling about him. Okay, he's very sure of himself. And Peter's that way, right? Always, when you read about him in the scriptures, he's always been that way. He's very impulsive. He's always the one that speaks up first. This is the way of Peter. What else? Note what Jesus says. Okay? Jesus says, after I'm risen, I will go before you into Galilee. But Peter said unto him, although all shall be offended, yet will not I. What did Jesus say just before that? He said, all ye shall be offended because of me this night. And he says, although all shall be offended, I won't be. Okay. There's arrogance there, right? He's been with Jesus a long time. Jesus knows him. When Jesus says, you all, he's including Peter, are going to be offended by me. Jesus gets more specific with him and said, this day, even in this night, before the rooster, the cock crow, twice thou shalt deny me thrice. But he spake the more vehemently, if I should die with thee, I will not deny thee in any wise. Likewise also said they all. So here he is. He's arguing with Jesus. That doesn't usually go well. It didn't go well with him before when the Lord said, get behind me, Satan. Peter is often focused upon the now. He's very temporally focused. What's going on right now? And I'm very guilty of that myself. That's why we get emotional about things. When we're focused on the now, we get into the emotion of things and the drama, and we get caught up in it, and we miss out on what God's trying to do, and that often happens through just trials and circumstances. And what we'll do is we'll just kind of get stuck in the mud of the circumstance, and then we'll draw other people into our mud. And then we'll tell them all about how disgusting it is, the mud and stuff. And then we just delayed the whole process of growth because we, not only ourselves got stuck in it, but we brought other people in as well. And now we've poisoned them with our negative opinion and thought on whatever we're dealing with. That's people who are stuck in the temporal. And we have to wrestle against that. We have to fight that. And recognize that life isn't about, it is about what's going on right now, but there's so much more going on than that. God's trying to help us to grow. I think we really see, I was just reading in my personal devotions about, just in the last couple days, about how Jesus was dealing with people who lacked faith. And do you know who those people were? They were Jews. Who does Jesus often commend when you read the Gospels for their faith? Gentiles, right? He goes up to Tyre and Sidon. While he's there, there's a woman of Canaan who comes before him, and she falls down before Jesus and says, my daughter, she needs help. Help us. And she's just kind of at the end of herself. And Jesus said, I'm here for the house of Israel, not here for the little dogs. Now, that wasn't derogatory. We read that, we say, whoa, he just called her a dog. They had their little pets too, like we have our little pets. And so she said, yeah, but even the little dogs get their crumbs. So what she was saying is, look, we even take care of our little pets because we like them. And she's saying, I'm a little pet. And Jesus, I think, just welled up inside, and he said, go. She's made whole. She's taken care of. And then just moments later, the way the text is written, the disciples, Jesus is healing all these people. All these people are following Jesus, and the people are hungry, and Jesus doesn't want to send them away. And he says, hey, guys, what do we have that we can feed the people? All these people? Now, mind you, he had just fed 5,000 people. Now, there's 4,000 men, not including women and children. And so they tell him, we have fish and bread. Bring it. So he feeds them, and there are 7 baskets afterward. These aren't the baskets like the 12. The 12 baskets that were taken up after were just like a picnic basket. These 7 baskets were huge baskets. And it was just Jesus showing, look, if you believe in me, there's so much I can do. And here are these guys, the disciples who've been with Jesus for 3.5 years. And Jesus says, you're all going to forsake me. They should have wept and said, we're sorry. We're not going to do it, is their response. And so that leads into the garden in verse 32. It says, "And they came to a place which was named Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, Sit ye here while I shall pray. And he taketh with him Peter, James, and John, and began to be sore amazed and be very heavy. And saith unto them, My soul is exceedingly sorrowful unto death. Tarry ye here and watch. And he went forward a little and fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, Abba, or it's like saying Daddy, Father, all things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt. And he cometh and findeth them sleeping, and saith unto Peter, Simon, sleepest thou? Couldest not thou watch 1 hour? Watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. The spirit truly is ready, but the flesh is weak. And again he went away and prayed and spake the same words. And when he returned, he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. Neither wist they what to answer him. And he cometh the third time and saith unto them, Sleep on now, and take your rest. It is enough, the hour is come. Behold, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise up and let us go. Lo, he that betrayeth me is at hand. Be on the alert. Okay, so how did Jesus prepare the 3 disciples to be alert? Look at verse 34. He said, My soul is exceeding sorrowful unto death. Tarry ye here and watch. How was he preparing them? Was this a common thing, according to what we read in the scriptures about Jesus? Have you read anywhere else in the scriptures, besides the synoptic gospels of the same passage, where Jesus was tormented to where he asked the disciples to pray in this way? No, right? This is it. So if you're hearing something for the first time and you're seeing Jesus vexed, he's in agony, how might you treat the situation? Okay, let's just say, you who have kids, grown-up kids, and they come to you and they are just in torment about something. Maybe something about their family, maybe something about their health, maybe something, and they're just really having a hard time. And you've never seen them this way before. And they're even maybe weeping. And they say, Please pray. You going to just skip that and go take a nap? You're going to pray. You're going to miss sleep in order to pray because you care so deeply about them. I think this just shows how they didn't understand all that Jesus was talking about when he said, they're going to crucify me, and the third day I'll rise again. They just did not get it. What does it mean later on where it says, the spirit truly is ready, but the flesh is weak? What do you think that means? Okay. Middle of the night, right? You get tired. You've been walking around all day. Yeah, maybe they wanted to pray, but they're weak. Yep, Barb. Okay. All right, we might be well-intentioned, or we want to do something, but we don't always follow through with that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. It's like we were looking at striving against sin in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. It's a battle in the mind, right? We want to be victorious. I mean, we're already victorious, right? Jesus did it. He won. But we want to be victorious over the temptation, but we become weary in our flesh and our weakness. We might get tired. We might be hungry. We might have any sort of other fleshly issue. Our spirit wants to. You know, do you feel that way ever? I just really want to be committed to the Lord. I just really want to read my Bible for a half an hour or an hour a day and pray with the Lord for another half an hour. I just really want to do that, right? The want to is there, but we're really tired. Right? Wow, I had a really hard night last night. It's really hard to get up early. Or it's hard to stay up, and I had a hard day at work. It's hard to stay up and just, take some time with the Lord. Or, after work, it's been so hard. I'm just worn out. You stop to read and you find yourself falling asleep. I mean, that's that. Spirit wants to, flesh weak. We live, like Dan said, we live in a body that has its, all sorts of weaknesses and issues. And so that's what Jesus is saying to them, which, by the way, he lived in a body too, right? And how often did Jesus go up into a mountain to pray, and he prayed all night? I was just reading in that book that Roger Bennett passed on to me, born on the 5th of July. Just tonight I was reading. And the man talked about how he had been up all night. He went bear hunting in the tundra of Alaska. Now, he has no legs, and so to get around, he actually just moves with his hands. And the tundra was soft then, and so he calls it a step. He says he's not handicapped. He walks on his hands. Every step he makes, he said, I would go in up to my elbow. And I would go and go and go. He said, I walked that way for 2 miles. I can't imagine that. 2 miles walking that way. And they got to an area, I would have said a clearing, but everything's clear in the tundra. There are no trees. And they saw a bear, 6 or 7 feet tall, looking at him. And he took out the bear. And then they had to go check on the bear. Well, what's the worst thing you can come on? A bear that is injured. Don't come upon an injured bear. They'll kill you, tear you apart. Well, he and another guy, thankfully he wasn't all alone, and they went up and found that the bear was dead, and they were dressing it through the night. And they finally got back to where they needed to go, which was back to the city where he was preaching that day 4 times. It was 6 o'clock in the morning when he got done. He didn't sleep all that night. He had walked on his hands through mud for 2 miles. And he preached 4 times that day. He said, my adrenaline was going so much I could have preached 8 times that day. Now, that's rare when our flesh allows us to do something like that. But Jesus did that often. He would stay up all night, and then he would go and he would serve people. His whole life was about giving everything for people. And so as he was talking to the disciples, as he's having these conversations with them, watch and pray. I'm having a hard time. I just need you guys, while I go and pray, I need you to be praying too. Because there's spiritual battles going on right now. And I just need you guys to help out. I've chosen you because I took you up to the Mount of Transfiguration. I've taken you here now with me, all these special occasions. I need you guys to pray with me right now. And what did they do? Well, they did what people who live in the flesh do. They fell asleep. Okay, what 2 things stand out to you about Jesus' prayer in verse 36? Because we need to move on here. And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. The cup is in reference to suffering. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt. What 2 things stand out to you about Jesus' prayer here? Give me one. Somebody give me one thing. Yeah, Bill? Okay. Yeah, that is. Yep. And what's the other one? Okay. He's human, and he knows what's coming. He knows that what crucifixion is like, right? People, they'd walk along the roads and they'd see people crucified on the side of the road. So this is nothing, this isn't like it was just Jesus and these two other guys who were crucified. That's the only people who were ever crucified. They saw crucifixions because it would keep people from doing terrible things, from killing people and so forth. Preventative. He was a man, and so that was hard. A man, and so that was hard. Okay, what else do you see here? Good. You see an intimate relationship with his father. He knew his father, right? Signs of that are he knows the power of God, that God is omniscient, that God is omnipotent, right? He knows that about God. But then he talks to him like that. Lord, if it's okay, this cup just kind of passed by me, that I'd be okay with that. But whatever your will is. Okay, and what else? I think what we see here is a huge contrast to what we've just seen with the disciples. Submission. What you see here is a spirit of submission. He knows it needs to be done. I think what Jesus might be hearkening back to is, can you think of anyone else who was going to be sacrificed, but there was another way? Okay, Abraham and his son, right? So it's almost like Jesus is hearkening back to that. Here he is, the knife is raised to come down on Jesus to die, and it's almost like, hey, it worked back then. Maybe there's another way for this right now. He knew that there wasn't. But I think this is here for our instruction. There are times in our lives when what's ahead or what's required of us isn't what we like. But it doesn't matter what we like, because we're servants of the Lord. And so, it could be in your work situation that you don't like something. Well, that's your responsibility isn't to like something, right? Your responsibility is to fulfill your responsibility. It could be that you're a wife, okay, and your husband says we're going to do something, and you just know that's not a good idea. But you have conversations about it, and he just says, no, but we need to do this. So you say, okay. And you do so willingly, not kicking and screaming. You do it not what I want, but what you want. And that's exactly what Jesus did here. Jesus is the example of submission. And I think Jesus knew that the cup this was it. This was his course. He was the perfect, spotless lamb, the Son of God, God in the flesh. But I think this is instruction for us. Because you see it in the first few verses that we looked at, that this wasn't the way of the disciples. They weren't submissive. But this is the way of a follower of Jesus. And he wants us to understand that. That, you're going to be in places in your life that aren't comfortable. And what we want to do right away is we run away from it. Jesus didn't run away from it. He endured it. And it was for our good and for his glory. And so we have to be aware of that. It was in the scope of God's ability to provide an alternate plan, as with Abraham and Isaac, and he was submissive to the Lord's will no matter what was asked of him. And so those are the two things that stood out to me anyway. Okay, do you see the contrast with the disciples? How does Jesus' sentiment expressed in his prayer to the Father differ from the disciples in verses 27 to 41, probably 31. No, 41. And I talked about that as well. Aren't we guilty of the same? We say we want to do the Lord's will, but then when it comes, we don't submit to it. And I kind of referred a little bit to this before as well. Okay, we may complain to others about our circumstances or sulk around our family and friends when things don't go our way. You're never guilty of that, are you? I have been betrayed. Isn't it interesting that the only disciple who obeyed the Lord that night was Judas? Do you know that? Judas was the only one who obeyed the Lord that night. The Lord said, what you do, do quickly. And he did. He went out and he betrayed Jesus. And we have that account right here. And so, and immediately, verse 43, while he yet spake, cometh Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude of swords and staves, or clubs, from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. And he that betrayed him had given them a token, saying, whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he, take him and lead him away safely. And as soon as he was come, he goeth straightway to him and saith, Master, Master, and kissed him. Over and over. That's what happened here. Just kiss Jesus, probably cheek, whatever, to make it very clear that Jesus was the one. Verse 43 is a clear fulfillment of what Jesus told the disciples on several occasions. The chief priests and scribes would be responsible for his crucifixion. They would, as they're penning these things, they're telling, in Peter's case, the story to Mark. They're going through the details. And they're thinking back, yeah, the chief priests, the scribes, all these people, right? They're the ones. And so they're the ones that are mentioned, okay? So what does the great multitude with swords and staves or clubs tell us about what Judas may have been thinking about the situation? Because there's a great multitude of soldiers. How many soldiers were they there, according to other synoptics? Approximately how many? Well, there were 11 of them, right? 11, Jesus and 11 others, so 12. Okay, not Judas. How many were there? 600. That sounds like overkill, doesn't it? Why might they have brought 600? Okay. It does, doesn't it? Sounds like maybe a revolt. So, hey, we're going to bring all these soldiers. Maybe the chief priests and scribes and elders made sure that nothing like that was going to happen. What else may they have been thinking? Or Judas? Okay. Good. Tina said, if I was Judas, I wouldn't have thought 600 was enough, especially when what Jesus said, according to the Gospel of John, when they were questioning Jesus, Jesus' answer was, I am. And when he spoke those words, what did it say that happened to all those who were there? They fell down. Jesus spoke the words, the name of God, essentially. I am God. And boom, they just fell down. He was in full control of everything that was going on that night. They didn't have any power. Jesus was giving himself up like a lamb to the slaughter. Okay, all forsook him. What do you think changed from verse 47 to verse 50? It says, verse 47, and one of them that stood by drew a sword and smote a servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Verse 50, and they all forsook him and fled. Okay, what changed from that moment? Barry, you were talking about that, right? Jesus is there. To the next moment, everybody just leaves. What's that? Fear. Yeah, they were afraid. I mean, all of a sudden, well, Jesus healed Malchus, right? We know that Jesus actually healed the man, his ear, which I think rescued Peter from maybe being the fourth person crucified that next day. But yeah, I think it had to do with fear. They all ran away, and some followed at a distance. Who do scholars believe that the young man is in verse 51? It says, and there followed him a certain young man. having a linen cloth cast about his naked body, and the young men laid hold on him, and he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. Okay, who do scholars think that this is? This is the only account of this in the Bible. So who may this be? Okay, John Mark, or Mark, the author of the gospel. There's a good possibility that that's the case because he was there, eyewitness. It had a linen, something lightweight, and then they try to grab him, and he escapes out of his whatever it is, and he runs away naked. And here's what's the kicker. It wouldn't be long before even the Father would forsake Jesus, right? Father, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? I mean, I expected of these sheep that have scattered, but not you. But the Lord is holy and cannot look on sin. A lot here, and as I read through it, I can't help but see the fleshly responses of humanity and how easy it is to be caught up in the flesh and to ignore the most important aspect of our being, and that is our spirit and the spiritual life. And we actually let the whole temporal, whatever's going on around here, become everything that we focus on, rather than what is God trying to do right now? How is he trying to shape me? How is he trying to grow me? As I talked about in 2 Corinthians 3:18, from glory to glory. The Lord is transforming me, changing me like this ugly caterpillar being transformed into a beautiful butterfly. And there's a whole process. And it's by the Spirit of the Lord, through the Word of God. God is trying to transform me. But we get so wrapped up in whatever's going on right now that we miss out on these wonderful opportunities that God has for us. So may God open our eyes to those, and may we see what he's trying to accomplish and live more like the Lord Jesus. All right, let's shift gears just for a couple minutes. We don't have a lot of time. I want to get to our meeting here, but let me mention some of the prayer requests here tonight. I wonder if there are any quick praises here this evening. It's good to go there. Yes, Beth?